Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Nice to be back with some of you. Some new faces, some people returning. This is our question and answer booth, and it begins with a question. So I have to turn to all of you. Do any of you have a question you'd like to get started with? This is a very important part of the question and answer process. It begins with a question. Really doesn't get started without one. Question? Yes? Do you have a question you'd like to ask? No. Okay. Yes.
Well, I guess it's like a possibly multitude of questions, but I have some questions about like choosing a guru. How can you identify a guru? And maybe you can talk also about the difference between like Diksa and Siksa Guru and something like that.
Yes.
That's well formulated.
Yeah, no, that's a very well formulated question. So in general, how does one recognize a guru? And then there are different categories of guru: Diksha Guru, Shiksha Guru, and so on. So there's so much within the Vedic text about the qualifications of a guru. And many verses can be quoted that the person should be situated in Brahman. They should know the Shastra. They should be able to eradicate your doubts because their knowledge of it is so clear. They should be able to represent it, to live it. In our tradition, we say that one who knows the science of Krishna, and that means that they're well acquainted with the Srimad Bhagavatam. They're well acquainted with, particularly in our tradition, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. If someone knows the teachings in those books very well, then they can. That's part of what they need to represent it. Especially, I would say this: that there's a lot of figures that kind of present themselves as enlightened beings and as guru-type figures. What we look for is someone who's a representative. A guru sees themselves as just one link in a chain, and they're representing a tradition. They're taking teachings that have been handed down in a chain, and they're very carefully handing those same teachings down without changing them at all. That's what we're looking for. They're in the Guru Parampara. They're in a chain from, first they have to live as a very good disciple. They always have to live as a very good disciple. And then they can potentially play the role, perform the service of Guru, of presenting the knowledge to you and instructing you. A Guru should be able to understand you and your situation. They should have genuine affection for you. And they should be able to help you individually practice this authentic tradition, giving you authentic instructions and helping you apply them in your own life. Because it's kind of like a doctor doesn't just give the same prescription to everyone, right? They've learned their field of medicine, and then how they apply that to the individual will be according to the individual. So that's important. There's different types of gurus. So there's a Diksha Guru, and of course this is within the Krishna Bhakti traditions. Other traditions may have other ways of seeing it, but there's Diksha Guru means the one that initiates you into the lineage, and only one person will do that. And a Shiksha Guru, there may be many, and that's giving instructions. Commonly, the Diksha Guru is also giving instructions. And really, when we say this, when they initiate you, we should understand this carefully too. There is a ceremony of initiation, right? There's a ritual that's done, and there are mantras that are chanted, and fire is burned, and then the rituals are there to reinforce the conviction of the disciple to change their life, and to turn, in one sense, turn their life back towards God, and make it their priority. So when we say initiation, and once we could be talking about the initiation ceremony, when after someone's performed the initiation ceremony, then we say, oh, they're initiated. But really, the initiation is something less, I don't want to say superficial, because the ritual is meaningful, but it's meaningful because it's an external demonstration of what's happening internally, and the internal thing is the real important thing. So what gets initiated? The idea is that a guru speaks the same message that's been handed down, purely, right? They can speak words that ignite something in the mind and the heart of the listener. And when the listener hears those words and decides, oh my goodness, I understand now. I don't know how many lifetimes I have been being born and reborn and reborn and reborn. And in all these different lifetimes, I've been identifying with my body. In one lifetime, I'm thinking I'm a man, and another one, I'm thinking I'm a woman. And the one after that, I was thinking I was black, and the other one after that, I was thinking I was white. And I've even been through the animal species and through plant species, and I've been going through this cycle of samsara for I don't know how many lifetimes. In every lifetime, not truly understanding who I am, what this world is, who or what God is. I've been confused and I've been wandering. And now that I understand this, I want to change. I know that as a human being I have a potential. I have a potential to inquire deeper into these truths. And now that this person has spoken this message into my ear, it's gone into my mind and into my heart, and it's ignited the determination to turn myself back, to change my life, to make a whole new priority. That's initiation, right? That something got initiated right there, right? That was the birth, the start of something. That's the start of one's path, the start of one's spiritual life, that conviction. So the person that can represent these teachings authentically, not take credit for them, not saying I went to the top of the mountain and I got enlightened and I came down and now I will tell you what I realized. No. I learned something from my guru, who learned from his, and from up and up and up this chain. And they're handing down these teachings very carefully in a very authentic way. And I'm trying to represent that as a humble servant. I'm not a big enlightened being. I'm like the mailman, right? I take a message from one place, I deliver it to the other. And my job is very small. This is the way a genuine guru thinks. I'm not a big shot. I'm very small. I'm just trying to be an authentic representative and pass this message along. And if you show me great respect for doing that, I think I'm really not even worthy of this respect. I don't even have the power to digest this respect. Really, this respect should be handed to my guru, who gave me everything that I have. And he's thinking I owe it to my guru. And up that chain, that respect goes up to God, which is the beginning of the lineage. You know, this is how a guru operates. This is how a genuine guru thinks. Right? They're not trying to enjoy whatever reverence may be given to them. Once they start to do that, they get confused. Nowadays, we hear about so many gurus that have so many troubles, and we see they exploit. This is not uncommon at all. Sometimes it makes people think, oh, maybe in this day and age, the guru idea is not a good idea. Right? Maybe that was for some previous time, for some previous people and some previous culture, but it doesn't work anymore. It always works. It's something that can work at any time, but it has to be practiced carefully. And we really need to educate ourselves. Read Bhagavad Gita, read Srimad Bhagavatam. Read the authentic commentaries on these books. We can really understand what it is. Right? Handing down a message, handing it down. We might express it in new words. The guru might express it in their own words, but they're giving the same message, and they're taking great care that it doesn't change. Right? That they presented it as it is in an authentic way. That's a guru. Is that okay? Is there something more? Is that okay? Okay, thank you. More questions? Any questions? Oh, yes. I'm forgetting your name.
Ankit.
Ankit.
Yes.
Yes.
So, I have a very basic question. So, we know the purpose of our life is to reach back to our original self, that is, reach back to God. But my question is like, why are we here? As in, I know what I've heard is like we were always there. We are not being created or manifested. We have always been there. But the thing is that in this body, maybe it's been a million of lifetimes that I'm here. But why was it even started? And then I have to go back and reach to God. So why is the whole journey? Why was I not always there? So that is my question.
It's a very subtle question, but I'll try to answer it in a simple way. I'll use an analogy. Okay? Are you a father? Okay. Sometimes a father, let's say they're driving a car, driving an automobile, and the son sees the father driving the automobile. Let's say the son is like 3-4 years old. Okay? Now when the son sees the father driving the automobile, what does the son want to do? He also wants to drive, right? He's got a desire is born. I would like to drive also. But reality cannot facilitate that desire. You understand? If the child wants to have the experience of driving a car, but reality does not facilitate the desire, then what will be needed to facilitate the desire? Who can say? I'll repeat the question. If reality cannot facilitate the child's desire to drive the car, then what will be needed to facilitate the child? Huh? Time?
Until the child can.
Oh well, let's say right now. But I get that's true. Time possibly could, but if he wants to drive a car right now, he's a desire to drive. Reality can't facilitate it. Yes, illusion, right? If reality cannot facilitate this desire, then illusion perhaps can. And so then the father will provide an illusory car, like let's say a toy car, right? And the child can sit in that toy car. Now, what is a toy car? It's a reflection. It's a shadow. It's a virtual, like in virtual reality, it's a virtual car. The toy car would never exist if a real car didn't exist first, correct? Right? It's the real substance has to exist, and then there's a desire for it that doesn't fit in reality, and then the reflection is created. And so then the father provides the illusory car, and the child can sit in the car and have some feeling that I'm driving a car, and the desire to some degree can be fulfilled. Okay? So the ancient texts like the Puranas, they say that our nature is that we're eternal. We're blissful by nature. We're full of knowledge by nature. And we live in a realm that's made of this, that has the same qualities, eternality. Like, we naturally exist in an environment that's not deteriorating, that's existing eternally. But we may have an idea to enjoy something that's beyond our nature. And then illusion is provided, reflection is provided, virtual reality is provided, and that's what we're moving through. To try to taste things, to try to have some experience that reality doesn't facilitate, so that we're trying to enjoy in the illusory realm. And it's kind of like we're going through this illusion again and again and again and again. Have you seen the film Groundhog Day? Have you heard about this? How many of you have seen Groundhog Day before? Okay. So there we have a person that's he's kind of stuck in a cycle. He wakes up every day and the same day is starting. He keeps waking up and it's the same day over and over and over again. And at first he's kind of like a character that doesn't really, he's not such a nice, he's kind of has like a low grade character. And as the days keep repeating, it gives him a chance to kind of think about himself and think about the world that he's living in and thinking about, maybe I'd be happier if I improve. Maybe I'd be happier if I let go of some of my lower nature and embrace a higher nature. And he keeps cycling and he keeps cycling and keeps cycling until he learns the lessons that he's meant to learn. And then the loop stops and he enters back into reality and he wakes up and it's another day. And so in a sense, the sages are saying that that's what we're doing here. We're trying to taste an illusion. We're trying to find happiness in illusion, trying to live a life that is not harmonious with our true nature. Another analogy is something like, let's say there's a tree, right? And there's a root to that tree that supports the entire tree. It supports every leaf on that tree. But what if the leaf said, why can't I be the root? Maybe I should be the root of the whole tree. I think that would be a very interesting role to play. Maybe I will disconnect myself from this tree and play the role of the root. But the problem is that by nature, the leaf is designed to be a leaf, right? And so once it disconnects, what happens to the leaf? It just dries up. It loses its vitality, you know? It needs to be connected. When it's connected, it's alive and vibrant and dynamic. As soon as it wants to be something that it can't be, it gets disconnected and it loses its dynamic nature. So in a sense, we may also be like this, the sages say. We wanted to roll as the center of existence, as the root of all existence, but by nature we're not designed to be. So we disconnect ourselves from the root, and then we lose our vitality. We lose touch with our own eternality. We think, I am this temporary body and I'm very vulnerable. I could die at any moment. We have fear. We identify with that body. You know, we become confused. We lose our knowledge. We lose our eternality. We lose our bliss. Sat Chit Ananda is our nature. And now we've lost touch with that. And so we're moving around here, still trying to taste something and hopefully learning some lessons in life. Right? Hopefully that, yes, there's something wonderful about my nature. I'm eternal. I'm full of knowledge by nature. I'm blissful by nature, but I've lost touch with it. I've lost touch with it. But there's a way to awaken it in me again, and that's to reconnect. If you read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's telling Arjuna again and again, Satatam Yuktanam, always be connected to me. What does yoga mean? Union, you know, reconnection. You know, through yoga we can reconnect with our own nature, we can reconnect with God, we can reconnect with the root of all existence, and learn that actually being a leaf on the tree is really good. You know, I don't need to try to be something ontologically that I'm not. And I can connect with that root in the deepest, most loving and satisfying way and feel reciprocation. Just like the leaf serves the tree, you know, leaves, I'm not a biologist, but from what I understand, they take in the sunlight and it has something to do with chlorophyll and they send some energy, you know, to the rest of the tree. And of course the root is supporting the leaf. You know, so it's a reciprocal relationship like that. And so all the messages that we're receiving in life, some of them are beautiful and sweet, and some of them are painful and really make us stop and think about what we're doing in life. But they all can help us if we interpret them the right way, if we process them the right way. They could be an impetus to reconnect and establish that vitality again. Is that okay?
One more thing connected to it. So once we know that we are a leaf and we get connected back to the tree.
Yeah.
So is there a possibility that again we might make the same mistake and then we want to be a root again and then come back here? Or then we realize that no, you know, I made this mistake and we never come back.
The sages say that we always can, but we don't. We don't, because we understand so clearly now. Right? We understand. It's like you wake up from a bad dream. I don't want to go back there again. You know. So it's like the freedom, the free will is always there, but the message is so clear. So when Bhagavad Gita speaks of that reconnection as that place you go where you never return again. Thank you. Good question. Okay. Any more questions out there? Yes. Hey, Howard.
Thank you. I had a question about your perspective on the use of psychedelics to help towards your path of enlightenment or personal growth and all that. So, what's your feeling about about those?
My thoughts on psychedelics. As a spiritual practice, is that specifically?
Yeah, and to help your growth and maybe
Yeah.
to help you, unlock stuff and have some realization.
I have experience. When I was a kid, I used to experiment with those LSD, ecstasy, mushrooms. I grew up in New York City, like in downtown New York City, and there's just like, even from a very young age, there's all kinds of opportunity and all kinds of people, all kinds of things to experiment with. So, but honestly, I was very young, and I wasn't doing it to try to like deepen my spiritual experience or widen my understanding of the world or anything. It was more like recreational. But I will say this, there are times, because I have that experience, I think I understand what kind of experience turns people on and makes them want to try it for spiritual understanding. And the way that what I experience that connects with that is that it kind of had a way of stretching my mind to think in ways that I had never thought before, especially in terms of perspective. So it's like one moment I'd be thinking, I am everything, right? Like, for all I know, nothing exists but me, you know? And then the next moment I'm thinking, I'm so tiny. I'm so infinitesimal, it's like incalculable how tiny I am. You know, so you go back and forth between thinking in different ways and shifting perspectives. And that can make you kind of, it does have the potential to kind of break you out of your routine kind of thinking. And I do think spiritual life requires that we break out of our routine type of thinking. So I can see, I can see why people could be like, whoa, there's a lot of potential here for my spiritual life. But if you're going to ask me, would I recommend it? I wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend it to people. And that's because of other experience that I have of practicing bhakti. And that is that, well, it's not only that, because actually, like I'm saying, like, just kind of growing up in New York and being around a lot of people experimenting in different ways. My own, and I'm not being I don't want to be judgmental of anyone or what they do or what they practice, but my own, what I perceived was that people that got deep into that, they got a little, I would say, if I had to use one word to describe it, I'd say cynical. You know, it seemed to me that it was warping them in a bit. You know, not so much people that did it on occasion, but people that really began to get into it, I just saw them kind of get cynical, a little hardened in a way. A little disturbed, just mind a little disturbed, you know. Maybe those experiences are a little bit more than we can process smoothly. So if you go too deep into it, you get it kind of puts an edge on them. That was my observation. But beyond that, the idea that I could experience something like that, like see the world and see myself from another perspective, although that's valuable, what I also found was that it disappears, you know, when you come down. And so when I got introduced to bhakti, I saw that it was giving teachings and practices, but especially teachings that also gave me that perspective. How to look at myself as if I'm very, 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 very tiny. But it not only gave me that kind of insight, but it gave me something to do with it. It gave me more information of how that could become very valuable and dynamic in my life. I'll give you an example. There is a chapter, whole chapter in the ancient texts called the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's called the calculation of time from the atom. Okay, now this is an unusual chapter. Usually there's some story happening and then some philosophy woven into the story. But this chapter reads by saying, if you were to calculate the amount of time that it takes the sun to cross one atom, right? Like you can measure time that way, right? Like how long does it take the sun to cross? Like I live in New York City. Like I live right next to Central Park in New York City. So like how long does it take the sun to cross the park? You could measure that amount of time and then give a name to that measurement, and then begin to measure time in those measures. So what if you could measure the amount of time it takes the sun to cross one atom, and then that becomes our smallest measure of time, and they give a name for it. And then they say if you multiply that like 32 times or something like that, then they have another name for it. And then if you multiply that another 16 times, then they have a name for it, which is lava matra. It means like 1/11 of a second. And you multiply that by 11 and you have a second, and you multiply that by 60 and you have a minute, and you multiply that by another 60 and you have an hour, and you go like that till you get to the day, like a full day. And you're wondering, why is it giving all these measurements, and what's the point to this? And it continues to like go into years, and then 100 years, and that 100 years is considered to be the measurement of a human life, like roughly 100 years. Okay, why are we doing this in this spiritual book, But it goes on, and it begins to describe that there are other beings on other planets, and they have much longer lifespans than we have. And in particular describes the lifetime of Brahma. Are you familiar with Brahma? So Brahma is considered to be the firstborn being in the universe. There's Vishnu. From the navel of Vishnu grows a lotus, and born upon that lotus is Brahma, who in his meditation is blessed or instructed within the heart by Vishnu how to create the universe. And his lifetime is one entire, is the lifetime of the universe. Right? And the universe is going through cycles of creation and destruction. Okay? This is the kind of thing that you can contemplate when you're on a psychedelic, right? Like, oh. And when it gives the calculation for the time of Brahma's life, it's like, it's so long that we really can't even, it just becomes a number that we can't even wrap our head around. It's something in the 311 trillion years? 311 trillion years. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't even have the perspective to even understand how big that is. And the chapter goes on like this, and then it kind of builds towards the end, and it describes that lifetime of Brahma, which is incalculably long for us, is only one breath of Mahavishnu, of Lord Vishnu, from whose breathing comes unlimited universes. Right? On his exhale, unlimited universes come from the pores of his skin. And on his inhale, they come back in. So why is it talking about all of this? Because I'm moving through my world, and I'm thinking everything is so important. Right? One person says something to me that's a little unkind, and I think it's a very big deal. And now my mind is wrapped up in it, and it's become my reality. This insignificant, tiny, incredibly, infinitesimally tiny speck of existence has suddenly dominated my awareness. You understand? And I may let it dominate there and eat away at me for days, for months, for weeks. Some people hold on to resentments for their entire life, and they die meditating on that resentment. But it's so tiny, it's so infinitesimal, it's so insignificant. How did I lose perspective? You understand? So perspective, these texts, they give us perspective in terms of time. They give us perspective in terms of space, just how tiny we are in terms of space. Right? But then they also give us the idea that at the same time we are eternal. Right? That I myself have always existed and will always exist. It's stretching the mind, and it's giving me perspectives by which I can dynamically see the world through another lens, and a deeply spiritual lens. And if I read these texts every day and contemplate them, then that far out psychedelic experience of seeing the world from another perspective doesn't disappear when I come down. It's something that I build, and it gets stronger and stronger, deeper, deeper, deeper. It's not dependent on any external pill. It's something that's inside me now, right? That's growing from within. And then you have something with you, something that can't be shaken under any circumstances, something that you don't need to go out and find some external thing and put in for it to work. And this is maybe the most essential point. And that really is the deep realizations that one can get from these sacred texts and from these practices. They're not cheap. They're not cheap. They are a key to unlocking a lock that has had us trapped for we don't know how many lifetimes. And they are a key into an entry into a realm of eternal divine love that we need to qualify ourselves for. We need to change. We need to do the work, the serious work. That is not a cheap thing. It's not just popping a tab onto one's tongue. It requires self-reflection. It requires humility. It requires kindness. It requires humility, forgiveness. These are all things that when we read these texts, it's going to help us understand this more clearly and apply these other perspectives within the context of doing the serious work of conquering my lower nature and allowing my true inner nature to arise. So I get it. In some ways I can appreciate why people want to experiment with that kind of thing. But if you're asking me my opinion, would I recommend it? I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend doing the serious yogic work. Okay? Okay.
Just like something that's intimate. Like view I found interesting is like that there's a reason why, like for example, mushrooms are on Earth, and that it might have helped. Like there's some studies that have shown that it might have helped like us develop our language or speak this and that. And for example, in religion, there's a lot of mysteries, for example, regarding soma or a bunch of like different things that were used in different religions. So how do we know that at the end of the day, yeah, those texts are there, but maybe they were also created with the help of those to attain those states of mind, and then they pulled that info out and then they gave it to the others.
It's interesting. If you take the idea of soma, which is mentioned in the Vedas, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. But even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he's saying that he describes that people on higher planets are drinking this drink. Right. We also hear just how rare it is. Practically nobody's allowed to drink this stuff. Like practically no one has access to it. There's a story about how the Ashvini Kumaras were blessed by the sage Vaishishta to be able to drink the soma, and it created like a whole big controversy in the upper realms because only the devas or not. This Ashvini Kumaras are like some super empowered high level beings. They're not supposed to be allowed to do that, So it's an extremely rare thing. But even then, Krishna says that the people that are on the higher planets and enjoying life and drinking the soma, that the clock ticks down. They're still under the. They're still trapped under the influence of time, and that experience that their experience is ticking away, and then they return back to the earth, having burnt off their good karma. So the Vedas. The four Vedas are saying, if you are very dutiful in life, and if you perform all the right rituals and sacrifices and express the proper attitude of gratitude to the devas and the devis, to the gods and the goddesses, you can be blessed with material things in life, including going to the higher planets and drinking the soma rasa. Right? But when you get to higher level shastra that's speaking to people that are on a higher level, that are ready to hear a higher message, like Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not enticing you with material enticements like Somarasa or the heavenly planets. It's saying, remember when you were reading in the Vedas about going to the higher planets and drinking Soma? Don't focus on that, because that's just going to burn off and you're going to come back down. Reach for the eternal. Reach for what's beyond it. Reach for divine love, because that's your essence and that's ultimately what you're meant to rediscover. Otherwise, you're stuck in Groundhog Day. You go up to the higher planets and you drink Soma, you come back down. You wake up again, you go round and around and around. So there are certain texts that glorify the drinking of the Soma Rasa, but those are actually material enticements that the higher texts, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, even Upanishads will say there's no point in this. So, thank you so much. Yes?
Hello.
Hello. Your name starts with a D. Diana?
Darlene.
Darlene, okay.
So, I've been recently experienced, like, mine is a question, but also like a problematic that maybe some people might experience
Okay.
in their spiritual quest or devotion to Krishna. And it's like, I found there's a competition in the spiritual world. Like, for example, I've been to many ashrams of Krishna, Hare Krishnas, and I felt like this pressure of, oh, I need to find my guru, I need to find a master. Also, like, oh, I don't have a spiritual name, so for people who tell like, oh, this is the only way to be a devotee. But I feel like I've been devotional like my whole life, even before knowing the name of Krishna, in my way. And I feel sometimes some way of being devotional doesn't resonate with me the same way of like people do. Some people do. And I feel this kind of pressure like, oh, that is not right. Or, I mean, there must be not just one way, and I know, but I have this pressure of like, oh my God, I'm not doing what has to be done, so it's like I have to do this and this and this, and I don't know, like I think I have more confusion now than before. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Let me see if I can summarize what you're saying, if I understand. So, you feel like you have a devotional aspect to your life that you've had for a long time, and you have an attraction to Krishna Bhakti. And sometimes when you're in communities that are practicing Krishna Bhakti, there's some pressure placed on you by other people to say, if you're going to do this right, you should do it in the following way, and what are you waiting for? And when you feel that, it doesn't feel right to you. Am I right so far? Now is the question, what should I do, or what the hell is going on here, or why do people do that?
For example, like finding a guru. I went to this ashram where like I felt like I'm the only one without a guru, and I felt like, oh, okay, then I'm different, or like, oh, I must be like, I need to do a lot of things first, and I don't know, this kind of pressure.
I get it. Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Within spiritual communities, there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of problematic stuff, right? Because it's not like a spiritual community is generally not like a community of super evolved, enlightened beings. It's a group of people trying to become super evolved, enlightened beings, and they may be in touch with super evolved information, but they may not have fully processed it, or they're fully understand it, or are fully living it. And so that's one reason why it's good to have a good guru that can help you cut through all that. But at the same time, it can be a problem. It can create types of pressure that serve no one's interest. Even it may be coming in a sincere way, and someone may be sincerely trying to help, but they may not really know how to help. There's also one common dynamic, is that people become very excited about their own guru. And there's some real, that excitement can be on a gradation from authentic to inauthentic. It can be healthy to unhealthy. You know, sometimes it's filling a material need for themselves to feel special. And sometimes it's like incredibly genuine, and it's a very dynamic spiritual connection by which someone's evolving. But it's not uncommon for people to be very excited about their guru and then want you to become a follower of their guru. When people are a little bit more mature, they don't do that. They may speak well of their guru, but really that connection that they have is something a little bit internal. It's a little bit more they keep to themselves. They don't have to go and show it to the world. That's not what they're after. Or if it was at some point, they've evolved to that point. I don't need to show the world how great my guru is and how great I am, because I've understood how great they are. And I have a very unique and close connection with them, like that. You know, it's common and it's immature. And so that kind of thing may play out. Now, if we go to the authentic texts like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and the texts that come in the wake of those texts, that go into specifics about how to practice bhakti, they will say that one should find a guru, take initiation from guru, accept instruction from a guru. It's fundamental to the practice. But how that plays out and exactly what that looks like will be different for different people. If we sincerely want to follow the path, we should be investigating. Who can help me with this? Who understands it deeply? Who embodies it deeply? If I could find a person that does that, and when they speak, there's within myself, there's the desire to change my life, and I feel that powerful inspiration. And I have doubts about this sometimes, and when they speak, they clear up all the doubts, and that conviction grows again. And when I look at their life, I see the way that they're living is the way that I want to live. The way that they are is the way I want to be. And I see that they're following in an authentic way, in an authentic tradition, and so on. Then when you grab onto that, when you go to that person, and as the Bhagavad Gita instructs, inquire from them submissively and render service unto them, that becomes a super powerful spiritual dynamic. That's when spiritual life begins to take off. Right? Otherwise, you can kind of hover for a long time, and it's kind of like, I like this. I like the ideas. I like the music. I like the food. I like the culture. I feel comfortable in it. It's really nice, but I'm not really getting into it in a dynamic way. Right? And if we're really seeing clearly, we recognize that life is short. I should really make my spiritual life a priority. That doesn't mean one has to move into an ashram, shave their head, etc., etc. But it means one makes that spiritual life and Krishna prema, that love for Krishna, you make it your priority, like that. So sometimes a little pressure is a good thing, but it's quite insensitive, especially if it's someone that you don't have a trusting relationship, to impose that on someone. It's immature. Let's say that you spend time in a community, you develop some close relationships, and then a person from a genuine place of caring for you, about you in their heart, they might say, have you thought about taking next steps? They might do it in a way that maybe feels a little bit like pressure, but you can feel the love in it. And therefore, maybe that a little pressure can be a good thing sometimes. It might be, we might need someone to give us a little, hey, But I think what you're describing isn't that. I think what you're describing is something else. So now the question is, how do you react to it? Right? Or how to feel. Or how to deal with it. Yeah. Would you like me to see if I can? I can give some general tips. One is, I would try to not let it affect you. Like, in other words, don't let it make you feel guilty. Don't let it make you feel confused. Recognize that perhaps this is an immature kind of dynamic coming at me. But at the same time, don't hold any resentment. Try not to hold any resentment. Try not to... you can say with yourself, you know what, this is not a person that I want to accept spiritual instruction from. But out of all the millions and millions of people wandering around this world, this person's really trying to develop their spiritual life. So let me respect that. Some people I can respect from a bit of a distance, like that. From a bit of a distance, but always respect, like that. And then, but seek out open up to people that you do trust. Maybe it's the people that aren't coming up to you and saying things like that are the ones that you should go up and inquire from, because they may be more mature and more patient. So that inquiry, from people that are more advanced down the path, it's an important part of the practice. And so maybe, you can try that too. Is that okay? Thank you, darling. That was a nice question. All right, everybody. More questions? More thoughts? Yes, Martin.
Thank you. So I've been reading the Gita, as it is, for a while, and I do get the impression that it says that everything that is not done in Krishna consciousness is a bit of a waste of time. So my question is then, how should I view interest in hobbies like playing the guitar or photography that might not be done in God consciousness, but it gives a lot of joy?
That's a good question. There are certain practices in life that are by nature bhakti-oriented, part of the bhakti path. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, list 9. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smartam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanavedanam. Hearing Krishna's pastimes, chanting Krishna's glories or Krishna's names, remembering Krishna's leelas, etc. Goes like this. The worship Archana, the worship in the temple. It gives a list of 9 things. These practices are elements of bhakti by nature, built right into it. And then there are other things in life that aren't by nature bhakti, but they can be incorporated into one's bhakti practice, like photography or playing guitar, etc. There's people in there right now playing guitar, right? But they're playing guitar thinking about Krishna. They're playing guitar in the level of awareness called bhakti or Krishna consciousness. So, as bhakti yogis, the idea is that one gives their entire heart in love to God. It means deep love. That's really what we're aiming for. And that kind of deep love means it's complete. I am yours entirely. My body is yours. My words are yours. My mind is yours. My time is yours. My wealth is yours. Everything that I have is yours. And Krishna is reciprocating by saying, everything I have is yours. It's like, that's deep, deep, deep love. And that's the love that's how Krishna Prema is understood. So, the idea is, the one that's got a bit of fire of bhakti ignited in the heart, they're finding ways to incorporate those hobbies into their spiritual practice. I can be a photographer for Krishna. I can play guitar for Krishna. All of these things can be done as part of my bhakti practice. There's very little that can't be incorporated into one's bhakti practice.
What if we are interested in some sports? So how can we incorporate playing to a bhakti practice?
I mean, that depends. Like, let's say you're a professional athlete, then there's all kinds of ways. There may be some kind of recreation that's good for the body. I do a little swimming. I like to go to the ocean. I like to swim. But I know it's actually good and healthy for me. And also, when I'm in the ocean, it's easy to think of God. But I don't play basketball. Because I'm 59 years old. If I do that, it's like I'm going to get injured. Right? It's fact. Certain sports are more dangerous than others. So maybe there's some desire in me to be a little sporting. I can find a way to do it that's harmonious with my spiritual practice. You know? And I'm careful not to do it in ways that won't be harmonious with my spiritual practice.
How do we do it? How do we do it in a way that is harmonious?
Well, that's what I'm trying to describe. I'm going to do it in a way that makes me healthier, so that I can use this body for God. And hopefully I can do it in a way where I'm not in complete forgetfulness of God, that even as I'm involved in it. That's why swimming could be a good one. You know, if people, maybe they ride their bicycle and they can think of God when they're riding their bicycle. You know, it's not, it doesn't take me away. You know, if I'm playing rugby or you know something else, you know, maybe it's a sport that I'm forgetful of Krishna and I may be harming my body. You know, so if I can help my body and I can think of Krishna, then we have a sporting activity that fits right in. You know? Okay. I think I see a question in the back. No, you're just kind of peeking over the shoulder. Okay, with an inquisitive look. Any other questions? Yes.
This is in relation to a question I asked yesterday about yoga asana, just based off what you were just saying about exercise. And I was just thinking, because I know you mentioned that yoga asana traditionally isn't part of Krishna consciousness practice.
Bhakti.
Bhakti,
Yeah.
per se. But what might that look like to do yoga asana in a state of Krishna consciousness?
When I practiced asana like seriously, like an hour and a half every day, I did that for years. And the particular style was called Ashtanga Yoga, so you may be familiar. And which is a practice of vinyasa yoga, right? Vinyasa meaning that you have a series of asanas, and they're connected with several movements. So you do several movements and then you go into the heart of the asana. Then you come out, you do the same movements again, and then you go into the next asana, the heart of that asana. Like that. With each movement there's an inhalation or an exhalation. You go into the heart of the asana and you take maybe 5 breaths or 10 breaths in the heart of the asana, or maybe more, depending on how you want to practice it. So one time, and I had a good teacher, a teacher that wasn't a bhakti yogi but had a deep appreciation for bhakti yogis and was serious. They not only learned asana, they learned Bhagavad Gita, and they learned philosophy, they learned puja, they learned all these different things. And once that teacher told me something, they said that vinyasa yoga is actually very good for japa practice. And I inquired into that more, and he explained to me, and then I began to understand. Now, there's one statement from the teacher that kind of really originated those this, at least brought it to the Western world, this Ashtanga Yoga. And he was once asked, I think by my teacher, he was once asked, how do we know when we're doing the asana correctly? Anyone want to know the answer to that question? How do we know when we're doing the asana correctly? This is, of all the things that this person taught, I appreciated this the most. Do you know what he said? It's close. It's something like that. He said, when the mind is quiet, then the asana is correct. Right? So he didn't say anything about the perfect alignment. But the idea was like, if you're in an asana that's very difficult for you, then generally your breathing is unsteady and your mind becomes unsteady. But when you can actually do the asana correctly, then your breathing can be steady and your mind becomes quiet. You understand? So that's the way you kind of know. You know, asana should be comfortable. Right? Sukham sthirtam. Right? You should feel happy. Your mind should be peaceful in the asana. Then you know you're performing it correctly. If your mind is disturbed and you're like, in some mind, you're like, you're counting quickly, you're just waiting for this to end, you're not doing the asana correctly. So the asana is correct when the mind is quiet. But when the mind is quiet, you can do all kinds of things with it, including place a mantra in the mind. Right? When the mind is quiet, you can take a mantra, you can place it in the mind, and you can let it ring through your mind. You know? So the same thing, I began to practice chanting mantras through the series of the asanas. That when I would go into the heart of the asana, I would chant a mantra, right? It was very nice, actually. You're doing this steady breathing, steady breathing, steady breathing. You go into the heart of the asana and you chant the mantra clearly. Let it ring in the mind. And then I began to understand that also this is what the japa mala is. Just as I would, you see, because what the vinyasa does is like, it's kind of like, say you wrote a mantra or a name of God on a chalkboard, and then you erased it. And then with great devotion and concentration, you wrote the name again on the chalkboard, and then you erased it again. Then you took a breath, wrote the name again, erased it again, and you did that 108 times. Then 108 times you would concentrate on that mantra with a clean slate. So in a sense, that's what we're doing with the japa mala. With each bead, it's like we're placing one clear mantra that just rings nice and clear. And then in a sense, we clean the slate, and then we chant another mantra. We place a mantra on that. And sometimes I like to do this practice. You find some sacred site, maybe a temple, and you chant your japa walking around it. And as you're walking around it, you're chanting the mantra as if it's almost like you're creating a flower garland around the sacred site, but you're creating a garland with the mantra. So it's kind of like you want to chant that mantra real sweet and real nice and drop it here and build that mala around the sacred site. And I find that helps me concentrate. And when I practice doing that, then when I'm not circumambulating a sacred site like that, I'm doing it with the mala. Right? I'm doing it with the same exact thing with the mala. Drop one, drop one, drop one, each mantra. Because this is where we want to come with japa practice. We want on each bead, we want to chant one mantra, we want to chant it clear and let it resonate through our minds. We want to chant it sweet. We want to hear that vibration. We want the mind to be absorbed in that vibration. That's a powerful practice. So in this way, potentially, asana can become favorable for even one's japa practice. Is that okay? Thank you. All right. Other questions out there? Yes, here we go. Your name again? Akshay.
I'd asked you a question about attachment to the results of your action yesterday, and you said that it operates more at a conscious level. Like it's about being detached from the results of your action at a mental conscious, from the point of view of Krishna consciousness.
Okay.
But this physical renunciation is actual renunciation of the results of your action required for true detachment. What I mean to say is a lot of people, for instance, work on a donation-only basis, for example. They don't really care if they're going to get money for their services in life. But a business owner still has to decide what price to charge for their service. So they, and yet they can be detached at a mental, conscious level if they get the results of their work. So I guess my question is, what's better? Is the actual renunciation of the results of your work, or is it mainly required at a conscious level to realize, just for self-realization and for attaining God or attaining Krishna?
Can you give me 6-1? So, in Bhakti Yoga and in the Bhagavad Gita, he's not going to emphasize external renunciation. The entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna to engage in a battle. Even he's calling him Dhananjaya. You know what the name Dhananjaya means? The winner of wealth, right? It's said to perform the Ashvamedha sacrifice, the Rajasuya sacrifice that Yudhishthira performed. You have to be accepted as the emperor, not just a king, but the emperor of all the kingdoms. the kings of all the other kingdoms have to recognize you as emperor and pay tax. And Yudhishthir sent each brother in another, one east, one west, one north, one south, to collect those taxes. And it's particularly Arjuna was, very effective, and he was called Dhananjaya, the winner of wealth. It's not that he wasn't supposed to gain that wealth, but he had no attachment to it. And he was asking Arjuna to be very active and very dynamic and very engaged in external activity, achieve something, but be detached from the results. So Krishna is really saying you need to be detached internally, but he's never saying you need to be detached externally. As a matter of fact, sometimes, at least in Arjuna's case, it's something that we can all learn from. He's encouraging him to be active. For him as a warrior, but for someone else it may be in the business world, or as a teacher, and so on. Listen to this. In this text, he uses the word sannyasi, and he uses the word yogi. And he's talking about who's the true sannyasi, the true renunciate, and who's the true yogi, or who's the real mystic. Okay? Text 6.1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Anashrita karma palam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. Krishna says, one who is unattached to the fruits of the work and who works as they are obligated is the real sannyasi and the true mystic, the real yogi, and not he who lights no fire or performs no work. Lights no fire means engaged in the works of this world, right? You buy a new home, you bring in the priest, they light the fire and they do the thing, right? You have a new child, you do a yagna. The sannyasis generally walk away from all of that. They don't have any yagnas to perform because they have none of these external aspects to their life. They don't buy a home. They don't get married. They don't have children. They don't start a business. They don't do these things. But Krishna is saying this is the real yogi. This is the real sannyasi. Okay. So it's not that everything that the fruits are engaged. They're engaged in the service of Krishna. But even that, like I can buy a home and use this home for Krishna, to give shelter to Krishna's devotees, and to use it as a place where Krishna consciousness is practiced. Then I'm not attached to it. I've given it to Krishna. Manasa Deho Geho. This is great ancient bhajan, Dear Krishna, my mind is yours. My body is yours. My home is yours. Everything is yours. We keep our body, at least for some time, but we give it to Krishna. We engage in Krishna. We keep our home for some time, but we engage it for Krishna. In this way, being detached from the fruits doesn't mean that we don't have the fruits, or we don't use the fruits. We don't engage them. But we see ourselves as stewards of them. They're not ours. My body's not mine, right? My home is not mine. My family is not mine. They all belong to you, Krishna. It's that understanding and that attitude that is true detachment. Otherwise, we may be walking away from the world and actually never really let go. Right. Does that make sense? Okay. Another question? Yeah. Yeah. No. You can go ahead. Ask another.
This is a bit of a question. In the age of AI and ChatGPT, I sometimes rely on it to understand scriptures, or even the Bhagavad Gita. I ask a question and I bounce ideas of it to understand scripture better. What are your thoughts on using AI to understand Gita? Is it stupidity, or is it okay, or what are your thoughts on this?
That's a good question, and I have an interesting answer for you. So I was trained by my guru in a particular way. He was intellectually very sharp, like very sharp. And he was the kind of person that was spiritually very intolerant. He was intensely engaged in his seva. And if you were to be close to him, you had to kind of rise to his level of energy. Otherwise, he would, with very sharp words, would correct you. And it could be painful. Okay? It could be very painful. And he had a way that he might ask you to do something or ask you to find something out, and you would come back to him and you would give him an answer. And then he would ask you questions that would penetrate so deep into figuring out whether you really investigated this thoroughly, or whether you're just putting on a facade, or whether you did it on a superficial level and didn't go deep enough. It was like, it would break you down. You would walk up and say, I have the answer for you, and this is the answer. And then he would ask you a question, and another question, and very soon you'd be like, I don't know. And you'd be revealed, right? And what it did, it was a way of making you think clearly and think deeply and learn how to serve. It was very effective if you could pass through it. It was like a fire that you'd have to pass through. I find that I need to relate with AI in the same way. That it can come forward with a lot of knowledge very quick, but a lot of it may not be true. And so you have to penetrate and penetrate and penetrate. You have to ask it more and more questions to find out what it's sharing, if it's, and it can quickly be revealed that it's just making stuff up. You know? But otherwise it can be very useful. I'm working on a book, and I had one question that I was researching. And I went to 3 different experts. But the question, they give you stuff off the top of their head. And more than really answer the questions with thorough information, they kind of point you in directions. So they still leave you having to do the research yourself. And I spent an hour with each one, and I didn't really have anything left over. And I asked one good, clear question to AI, and it gave me a lot of really good information instant. And then it took me about a minute and a half, and I had exactly what I needed. So it can be very effective and useful tool. It's something that we can engage in our service. It's something in my seva to my guru and to the Guru Parampara and to Krishna. I find it can be a very effective tool, but I find I can't trust it. I need to really, if you're unthinking in using it, you're going to come up with garbage. But if you're very sharp in how you use it, it can be very effective. Okay? Thank you, actually. Yeah, like that. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Gregor. I have 2 questions. First question is, and I had many people from Krishna people, they say you should be, whatever you do, you should be not looking for the fruits. That I heard this before also.
Yes.
But then they say the only way to get to paradise, to get to nirvana, to pray to Hare Krishna, to say Hare Krishna. And now, isn't that also looking for the fruits, for some goal which you have?
Yes, but it's not material fruit, it's spiritual fruit. So when Krishna is saying be detached from the fruits, he's not saying have no goal in life. If we go back to even like the Upanishads, we find the yogi, they have a sadhana and a sadhya. The sadhana is the practice, and the sadhya is the goal. And the yogic text, they describe yoga as someone very focused on the goal. Like yoga means I'm not distracted, I'm focused on my goal. There are texts like in the Upanishads that speak of like, how does it go again? I think it's that the self is the arrow, the mantra is the bow, and I forget what, but it may be that Atmagyan or some, or or moksha is the target. So when we hear, it's not that the yogi has no goal or no focus, no aim. The yogi has a very clear aim, but their aim is never the temporary material things of this world. Yeah. Yes. Is that okay, Gregor? Okay. Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Sometimes there's talk about it's all about the journey. But I never hear it coming from the authentic text. I don't hear that. I get it. The journey is special. But when we read the authentic yoga texts, Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra and Bhagavatam and Gita, the idea is always that there's a goal. The journey is meant to take you to a particular place, and you have to focus on that goal.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Sarah.
Sarah?
I have a question regarding self-love. So, how would you define self-love nowadays?
Okay. Personally, I shy away from the term because I believe that's, and I don't want to be too critical of someone that uses the term. I think you could use the term in a healthy way, but I prefer to keep the term love in its traditional form, meaning that there is a subject of love and an object of love. There's a person that feels love for another person, and that's what love is. But I think when people are talking about self-love, in other words, what does love look like? What does complete love look like? It's like you have these incredibly deep feelings that, and even in bhakti it's described this way, that you feel such deep love for the object of your love that your hair is you have goosebumps and tears are coming from your eyes and your voice is choking up as you're expressing the deepest emotions. I don't think any of us have that for ourselves, right? And that's what love is. But I think when we speak of self-love, what we're talking about is sometimes we think about ourselves in ways that are harmful, and sometimes we behave in ways that are harmful to ourselves. And so clearing that up, getting all of that, getting over whatever hurdles that have created this kind of problematic behavior towards our own body or our own minds is what we might call self-love, right? And so that means that the truth, if we're actually connected to truth, if we actually understand who we are, what we're made of, then we should understand that on one hand, I'm very tiny and insignificant. But on the other hand, I'm eternal and I'm brilliant. Like I'm a spark of spirit that never dies, and you can't cut me in half, you can't burn me, you can't crush me, you can't disassemble me. And I have a relationship also in eternity with the very source of existence. The soul of the universe is also existing within my body right next to me, and I have an eternal connection. So my existence is on one hand tiny and insignificant, and on the other hand eternal and incredibly beautiful and brilliant and satisfying. And my feelings of unworthiness, potentially, those are illusions. That is my own self comparing myself to others and feeling some sense of confusion. And really, it's a kind of confusion that is kind of the opposite of arrogance. Like both arrogance and unworthiness are both confusing ideas, and they're just preventing me from experiencing who I really am underneath. Right? And so Atmagyan, truth, hearing truth repeatedly, and honestly, sometimes a counselor can help with that kind of thing too. I don't want to, there can be value in that. But ultimately we want to come to that real Atmagyana, that real knowledge of the self. When we really know who I am, we will love God and every living being and be very happy in that position. And if we want to call that loving ourselves, then we can call it that too. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Gregor, related to that? I'll take it.
So you said the love, because this also question is often in my mind.
Yes.
Because I thought love, like you described to the heart, and it was really, but finally it was dependence, and but this what you described, at least the feeling that you are very happy without any object. Is it,
I should be more clear. Yeah. So the teachings on bhakti is that there's always an object of love. And the fundamental central object of love is God. And and God is seen as the root of all existence. So if my love goes to God, then my love goes to all existence. So in other words, if I see God, if I understand God in truth, then I see that there's nothing disconnected from God. And in one sense, everything is God's energy. And so therefore, if I love God, I love every living being, because I see every living being in relation to God. Okay? That's fundamental spiritual knowledge. And then there's esoteric spiritual knowledge. But the fundamental knowledge, I see you still have a quizzical look, so maybe we need to, you have another question about? I'll just say this. If I read Bhagavad Gita, I'm going to see, there's a verse, famous verse. Could you give me 435 again? There's a fundamental verse, 434. Tadvati panipatena pariprashnena sevya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. The tattvadarshis, those that see the truth, you should approach them. Ask them questions. Pariprashnena, ask them with humility, place your questions before them about spiritual life. And also sevaya, and you should serve them. This is Bhagavad Gita's advice about how you get spiritual knowledge. It says it's a combination of good questions in the right mood, and also seva, that you show respect to that person. The humility becomes a channel for the knowledge to enter you and for you to process it and understand it. If there's no humility, you can hear the words, but you can't process it, and it doesn't grow in you in a healthy way. So that's a famous verse, because it's a verse about how to gain spiritual knowledge. But there's a verse after that that describes the knowledge that you get and the understanding that you get. And that's this. I really should memorize this one. It's so good. Having obtained real knowledge, true knowledge, from a self-realized soul, you will never fall into illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but a part of the Supreme, or that they are mine, Krishna says, or that they are mine. So he's saying that when we're in our illusion, we see everything as separate from God. And when we see truth, we see there's nothing disconnected from God. So I see you and you and you and you and myself as all connected, like leaves connected to one root. And when I water the root, I water every leaf on the tree. When I love the root, I love every leaf on the tree. When I love God, I love every living being. Like that. That's fundamental spiritual knowledge. With that knowledge, I can move through this world, never being an illusion, understanding who I am, understanding who everybody else is, understanding what this world is, understanding what the divine is. I can be situated in reality rather than an illusion. But then there's an esoteric side of bhakti. And the esoteric side has to do with, there are states of awareness, states of consciousness called prema, divine love, wherein I love God in an intimate way. That the varieties of love that we see in this world are said by these sages to be reflections of love that we experience in eternity in relation to God. So for instance, in this world we see parental love, parental love. the love that a mother or a father has for a child is a unique variety of love, right? And even in different stages, like there's one love that a parent has for a newborn child. And then when the child's a little older, the love takes on a different flavor. And then when the child is still older, the love takes on still another flavor, another taste. So there are many nuances to even one form of love, like parental love. Motherly love is a little different than fatherly love, and so on. So many varieties. There's also the love of friendship, the love that one friend has for another. And there are many different varieties of friendship. Some more intimate, some a little bit less, but they're still very special. There's also the love that one has for a superior. Like sometimes you may love a parent like a superior, or you may love a teacher, someone that you have deep respect for. Sometimes there's an author and they write the book and everybody's lined up and everybody's coming up and say, you changed my life. You know, there's a certain love there. You've given me something. I respect you for that. I want you to sign this book so I can always remember you every time I pick it up. You know, it's like, that's another variety of love. And then there's romantic love. Right? Very, very intimate, very intense love. And within romantic love, there's many varieties. There's the love of husband and wife. There's the love of lovers that aren't married. There's secret lovers. Very, very... We don't talk about it. It has to be secret. It makes it very intense. You know, can't let the parents know. You know, it's another flavor. What these sages are saying and what they've seen through their own meditation, their own vision, and hearing from these sacred texts, is that the love, all these varieties of love that we see in this world, they exist in eternity, and one can have these varieties of love for God in eternity. And when you feel that, you have all that goosebumps and tears coming from the eyes and voice choking up, and that's love. That's prema. That we can feel that for God. And the practice of bhakti can awaken that. The yogis say it's in us. It's already in us. It's the reason why we're looking for it externally in this world, but never quite finding it in its perfection. But that love for God is within us. It's kind of like we're trying to water the leaf. You know, if you want, we're trying to find that person to love. And it's kind of like finding one leaf on a tree and pouring water on the leaf. It doesn't really work that way. You have to pour it on the root. You know? The real love. We think like if someone falls in love, and then we say, well, what is it about the person that made you fall in love? Oh, they're different than anybody I ever met. You know? But the sages, they say, what you've fallen in love with is something that's going to change and disappear. But when you really have real love, you love that which is the same in everyone. In one sense, there's something the same in all of us, that we are each a spark of spiritual energy. We're each eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss eternally. And that's something that nothing can change. And when I really love you, I love that. I love that spark of spiritual energy that is you, because your body is not you, and even your mindset is not really you. That's you, and that's not only in you, that's in you and you and you and you and you. So if I really love you, then I really love everybody else too. Okay, so real love means we're loving what's the same in everybody. And again, that's fundamental spiritual knowledge, but then there's esoteric spiritual knowledge, which is a whole other thing. Okay. I think we have run out of time, everyone. Something to think about. Gregor, he's deep. I can see he doesn't just hear these things, but you think about them. It's nice. It's nice. There's special books you can read. There's a book called The Nectar of Devotion. The Nectar of Devotion. It's a book that takes from all the ancient... It's a 500-year-old book. It's a summary of a 500-year-old book that draws from the 5,000-year-old books and explains this esoteric side of yoga or bhakti in a very nice way. So books like that might interest you. Nectar of Devotion. Thank you all so much. It's been a joy spending this time with you. Tomorrow we will not have our class at 9 o'clock like we do most days, but we will be back the following day, which is Saturday. Saturday at 9 a.m. I'll give a class here in the hall. We have about 5 more or so left before I go. And otherwise, I'm here every night, though, from 7 until 8:30. Yes, Morgan?
This will be going on tomorrow.
Yes, this will be going on. Okay, thank you all so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.